The moment the Oblivion dropped out of FTL, Captain Rhys Lorne knew something was wrong. The distress beacon was supposed to be coming from a derelict research vessel, the Dawnbreaker, drifting near the event horizon of an uncharted rift. A routine salvage, or so the mission brief had claimed. But the rift wasn't just a tear in space. It was something else. Something alive. That distortion is messing with our readings, Lieutenant Doran muttered, his eyes flicking between displays. Sensors show the Dawnbreaker is intact, but there's no life support. No bodies. No nothing. Commander Elise Vance, Rhys's XO, leaned over the console. We getting anything from the ship's logs? No response, just static. Doran hesitated. And, there's something else. Our own signal is bouncing back at us, but it's wrong. Like an echo that doesn't match what we sent. Rhys frowned. Prepare a boarding team. We go in, we get the logs, and we get out. The Dawnbreaker's interior was a tomb. Corridors stretched into darkness, their emergency lights flickering in a sluggish pulse. The walls were slick, as if condensation had formed despite the vacuum. The air smelled stale. As if something had been rotting, and time itself had forgotten to finish the job. Something's off, said Specialist Tanis, sweeping his rifle's light along the walls. This place doesn't feel abandoned. It feels waiting. Rhys exhaled sharply. Stick to the mission. Get to the bridge. Pull the logs. They moved deeper into the ship, boots thudding dully on the metal floor. Then, Captain. Vance's voice was tight. Tanis was right behind me. Now he's gone. Rhys whipped around. Tanis had vanished. No sound. No warning. Comm check. Rhys barked. Static. They doubled back, searching, but there was no sign of him. Just his rifle, lying in the middle of the corridor like he had evaporated mid-step. Then the whispering began. Rhys turned, his breath locking in his chest. The bulkhead ahead was smooth metal, but it reflected something that wasn't there. A figure. Human-shaped. Watching. He whirled around. Nothing. A shiver crawled up his spine. We're leaving. Now. But when they turned back to retrace their steps, the corridors weren't the same. The ship was shifting. Vance swore under her breath. This isn't right. This isn't possible. Doran's voice was strained. Captain. I just checked our bioscanners. We're missing more than just Tanis. Rhys narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Doran swallowed hard. The ship's logs show a crew of 5 on this mission. But I only see 3 names. Mine, yours, and Vance's. Rhys went cold. We had 7 on this team. Not according to the records, Doran whispered. The others, they were never here. The whispering grew louder. A shape flickered at the edge of Rhys's vision. No, several shapes. Figures standing just beyond the reach of their lights, shifting in and out of focus. Like echoes of people who had once been real. Rhys clenched his jaw. We have to get back to the Oblivion. But when they turned the next corner, the airlock wasn't there. The ship had sealed them inside. Doran exhaled shakily. Captain. If the ship is changing, then we might not even be on the Dawnbreaker anymore. Vance's voice was barely above a whisper. What are you saying? Doran's hands trembled. What if we never left the Oblivion? What if the moment we entered this rift, it rewrote us? Rhys felt something cold claw at his gut. What if they were already gone? What if they had never existed? The whispering grew deafening. Rhys turned, and this time, he saw them clearly. The figures. They weren't strangers. They were his crew. And they were fading. Their faces were smeared, as if reality itself was forgetting them. And then he saw himself among them. The rift had already taken him. He staggered back, his mind fracturing. He couldn't remember his childhood. Couldn't remember why he had joined the fleet. Couldn't remember if he had ever been real at all. Then, a voice. His own voice. You can fight this. A split-second realization. The rift wasn't killing them. It was erasing them. Piece by piece. But it wasn't finished yet. Rhys clenched his fists, forcing himself to remember. To hold on. He reached for his comm. Oblivion. Emergency recall. Lock onto our biosignatures and pull us back. Silence. Then. A roaring sound, like space itself being torn apart. Reality snapped. Rhys was back on the Oblivion's bridge, gasping for air. Vance and Doran collapsed beside him. But Tanis wasn't there. Neither were the others. Rhys's hands shook. His mind screamed at the gaps where memories used to be. The rift had taken them. It had won. Vance whispered hoarsely. We were never supposed to come here. The distress beacon crackled one last time. Then, silence. The Dawnbreaker was gone. And so were the names of the lost. Rhys opened his mouth to say something, anything, but he couldn't remember what. As the Oblivion accelerated away, a final message scrawled across the ship's malfunctioning display, as if written by an unseen hand. I am still here. The rift had not forgotten them. And neither would it ever let them go. Days passed, but the sense of wrongness never faded. Vance had stopped speaking, her gaze distant, as if her mind was unraveling thread by thread. Doran was even worse. His hands trembled at the slightest sound, his eyes flicking to the edges of rooms as if expecting to see something just out of sight. Rhys couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the fading figures. He saw himself among them. Then, one morning, the ship's logs changed. Rhys woke to find his own name missing from the roster. His breath caught. He sprinted to the bridge, past corridors that suddenly seemed unfamiliar, as if the Oblivion itself had begun to shift. Doran! Vance! He shouted. No response. The ship was empty. He checked the logs again. Only one name remained. Tanis. A whispering filled the air, a soundless voice stretching through the void of the ship. And as Rhys turned to the viewport, he saw the Dawnbreaker still drifting in the rift, as if it had never left. And standing on its bridge, looking back at him, was himself.